So I was asked to create some music for the Women's World Cup, and here's how it went down. Hi, I'm LUME, I'm an artist producer, and I'm here to share everything I know about music production. So I was told they wanted something upbeat and soulful, and because it was for football, I presumed there'd be lots of action in the shots, so fast changes, big impacts, that kind of thing. So I just got the opportunity to pitch an idea to them, and then once that got confirmed, I had to make some edits and chop the piece down. So I thought we should have 3 different moods and for the track to evolve. I knew it was going to be upbeat, so I started with a 4 on the floor kick pattern. And I wanted to find some percussion sounds that weren't obviously Western, but sounds that could be from anywhere in the world. With the kick. Then I found this other percussion sound, which is this orange one. I love that sound. It's like if a percussion instrument wanted to sound like a lion. As you can see, these percussion sounds are not on the grid. So when I did drop in a tambourine, it doesn't really sit well. But I do use it later in the song. So tambourine wasn't yet working, so I think I muted that, and I still wanted that fast subdivision rhythm. So I found this strumming pattern on Contact. It's the Electric Sunburst Deluxe. I think I got this tip from a producer called So Wiley, so shout out to So Wiley if you're watching this. And it's this dead note strumming pattern. I tried some snares, which are currently muted, but it kept feeling like this idea didn't need a backbeat, not yet anyway. The final thing that made the cut was this arpeggiator. I have no idea what I recorded this on, but I'm feeling it might have been this Super 6 synth, but that is a lesson learned because I would eventually change the key of this, and I realized that if I doubled the speed of the arpeggiator later via warp mode here in clip view, then it would sound really cool. But at the moment it just sounds kind of basic, but I kind of knew there was something special about its texture. So this was where the basic idea came from. What's important to me is as I'm building this idea, if I make any drastic changes, I'm always clicking save as instead of save, always making new versions. Kind of went extra this time, within brackets, sounding good here. Just in case I make a really bad error, I can always go back to when it was sounding good. So here is the final session. It's pretty huge. There's been lots of mini steps to get here, but this is the final version. So let's see how it evolved from that initial idea. Obviously we got super fast. It's important to note that if you want to change tempo in Ableton subtly, as long as warp mode is on all the audio files, it should be absolutely fine. And for MIDI, we don't have to do anything at all. Is that my computer? Oh, bless it. It's quite hot. The kicks have got more wild. I've layered a subby one with a little bit more of a toppy one. And the percussion is still very similar. So a drum element that I think really makes it is the claps, and they sound ridiculous when soloed. They don't sound like claps at all, but in the mix they sound great. Let me show you them soloed. What even is that? But in the mix, I'm digging it. So I knew that I wanted the song to not start with that section, and I needed something that was building in momentum that started a bit more mysterious. Because the brief included soul references in it, I wanted to keep some of the instruments really organic and really real sounding. So I grabbed the piano from Arturia, it's like a jazz upright, and came up with this pattern. So I copied the intro piano over to a new MIDI track. I opened up the Stage 73, also by Arturia, it's a Rhodes, and then I gradually brought it in with automation in volume. So I also faded in some percussion sounds, some finger snaps, the tambourine we talked about earlier, and some claps. They're getting louder and louder. I did record all my snaps organically on a mic, but I didn't like how they sounded, so muted them. And got a sample of some snaps instead. There's a little pad that fades in as well, as you can hear. This is when I start to get this humming idea in my head. So stacking the vocals and stacking a ton of them was quite important for this step. I really wanted that gang vocal sound, and I even recorded them in singing in different voices. They actually didn't want really in-your-face vocals or any at all really, but I thought this would be a good catchy mantra, and I thought I'd get away with it. So at first this vocal riff was only 2 times round, and that felt good, although they wanted the intro longer, but not so long that it could be 4 times. So my musical brain was like, oh no, 3 times round, this is going to feel too weird. We had to make sure that the audience knew something big was about to happen. So it was important to add these riser effects and these swells in the right place to give that sense of, don't worry, 3's okay. 3 is totally fine. There's a few other subtle things happening here, like everything's slowly getting louder and the vocals are slowly becoming unfiltered. What is finally really important to mention is that as soon as we hit beat 4 of the bar, we're muting absolutely everything to create this silence. To do this, we just press A for automation and find our mixer, find our speaker, turn everything off. But I've automated all the reverbs to turn off as well, because sometimes they can hang over. And what we want is that clean, crisp, muted effect. Then I added some subtle bluesy guitar to the end of that beat that we made earlier. The thing that's making that sound so tremolo-y is Tremolator by Sound Toys. And originally I did send this through a Universal Audio Fender amp via my console app, and I recorded that in, and then I just EQ'd it from here. So with the EQ, I'm kind of focusing on the mids mostly, making sure it's not getting in the way of our glittery high synths later, and our bass. Adding a lovely reverb, EMT 140. I noticed a frequency that was really annoying me, so I bumped that out there. And yeah, we got the Tremolator. For this final section, I needed this to be epic, almost cheesy. We've got the kicks, they are doing the exact same pattern. There's now 3 layers, because more is more. We've gone for some huge impacts. Here they are. Some higher ones, some low bassy dives. Whatever this is. Like a stompy clap thing. We've got a big fizzy one. That's the main one, isn't it? And now we've got a proper backbeat. We've got a snare. But how fun is it that we've got an actual marching drum? Claps are still there, as weird as ever. Almost like stomps at this point. Wait, I need to take one ear off my headphones because I'm shouting at you. Now the queen of all plugins in this track is OTT. I've not used OTT before this, and the main reason was because I'm a Pro Tools girly OG, but I've moved over to Ableton a couple of years ago and I just never used OTT. Look how amazing this sounds. So it basically is a multi-band compressor doing lots of different compression on various bands, a lot on the highs. Here is what it sounded like before OTT on the claps and the snares. It makes everything sound like it's electrocuted in the best way. As I'm sure most people who have just discovered OTT, I put it on everything. I'm talking the vocals, some of the drums, definitely on the synths. Oh my god, there's even 2 OTTs on here. That's so ridiculous. Now another plugin I overuse is Decapitator by Sound Toys. Let me pull it up. Here she is. Let's have a listen to Decapitator being the only thing muted, and then let's bring it back in. So without Decapitator on these vocals. Bit sizzly from the OTT, but next level. Barbecue vocals going on here. Next we need to talk about bass, because bass was pretty much absent for the previous parts of the song, but now it's here. Let's have a listen to what the bass sounds like. First we have this sub bass layer that's giving those sub frequencies. Also has top end as well, and then to cover the mids we've got a honky one. because we all know bass does not come through on a lot of devices. So even though I'm covering quite a large frequency spectrum with the bass, I do feel like I get away with it because I'm heavily sidechaining the bass plus a lot of the other instruments. So for that, I'm using Track Spacer. You can use whatever sidechain plugin you want. I'm sidechaining it to a track called Sidechain, which is just a kick drum that is muted. Partly because it's going to sidechain just the frequencies that need to get out the way. So my favorite bit, do you remember the ARP from the beginning? Now it's in a different key, it's faster, and it's double the speed. And listen to how pretty it sounds. Oh, I love it. So we've got Spiff just accenting a few of the transients, making it less of a blur, more of a part. And we've got loads of reverb from Valhalla Vintage Verb. And then we've got this free stereo widener plugin from Isotope. This is Ozone Imager 2. So it's quite hard to hear on this track because this part is already quite stereo, but I just wanted that glittery sound to just be spread as wide as possible. It was quite important that I wanted the track to evolve and reference the previous instruments. So we referenced the piano from before, but this time it's very thin and out the way. So on that note, we referenced the vocals from earlier. They're a bit of a call and response to a new vocal part I've added, which you'll hear later, but here's how they're sounding. I wanted a new vocal part to take the limelight, as we'd been hearing the a lot by now. So here's what I came up with. I then got a bit singing happy and I just started duplicating it. I duplicated it the octave lower. And then just started all my voices in again, like a shouty one, or just a little bit more of a soulful one. Kind of developed into something bigger, like a crowd singing. It felt less like this little ethereal fairy and more a stadium singing back. And then I just duplicated that with some pads from the Super 6. They're here. Lots of reverb on them. Some are a bit brassy, some are just quite warm. Okay, we're nearly there, guys. We've got all our sections, except we don't have a way to transition between them all. So let's talk about the transitions. We've already mentioned that the first transition of the song is just a muted moment with automation. Let's have a listen to that again. Into our beat that we made originally. A little bit of a crash cymbal there, not too much of a transition. Here, so here we have that sucking up motion again. We're using reversed sounds. Next we have a juicy tom fill. I do like to avoid tom fills, they scare me a bit. I think it's because the sound design is quite important as all the other instruments are getting out of the way for the toms, and so the limelight is on the fill, but I think I managed to find some sounds that really work. Let's solo the drums here. And so what we've got is just like some claps and the toms doing a little pattern here. And with the whole drums. And then to finish up, we do this exact same tom fill, but we slightly change the pattern. So this has got 2 spread out snares, whereas this had 2 in a row. Once you find one you like, easy peasy, copy paste, change one thing about it. And so I wanted to add a little bit more brightness to the end section. And so I sang in very light, airy falsetto, this syncopated 1-note part. Doubled it, panned it left and right. Added a whisper track. Now I love a whisper track that sits behind a vocal. Of course this is overkill on the reverb, love that. And then we just created another version of it. We changed the foreman with Little Altar Boy. And then the octave lower. All together we've got that. So in the mix, you can't hear it in the massive section so much, but you start to hear it as the large section comes to a close. We end with some percussion sounds, and you do hear it right at the end. And one more thing that I completely forgot to mention is on a previous track that I made, I recorded a lot of these like breath noises in with my voice, and I never used the tracks, so I pulled them in. They're me just playing around on the mic. Let's have a listen to one of them. And I love it. I think it's so good for this sport sounding track. On it, I've got some EQ, cutting out a load of the lows. Microshift's good for that thickening feeling. We've got chorus, again, good for thickening. Then we've got decapitator, adding a load of grit. It's on 10 out of 10. And then some reverb that only comes on right at the end. So these breaths happen right at the beginning of the song and right at the end. And then we have it. Okay, we did it. So that was how I made some music for the Women's World Cup. And if you like this video, then feel free to subscribe and I will see you in the next one.